Lane Kiffin needs to stop these quarterback games before the Ole Miss Rebels take on the Georgia Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's show, we talk about why this might be the simplest game of the season for Ole Miss. Just stop the run. If you do, you'll win the game. If you don't, you'll lose the game. It won't come down to who plays quarterback or any other position on the field. This game will be decided by the ground attack. We'll also highlight what to watch for and what needs to happen for the Ole Miss Rebels to come out on top. But first, we'll discuss this strange quarterback situation Lane Kiffin has created almost out of thin air, one that seems to exist entirely for Kirby Smart's benefit. Kiffin isn't naming a starter. He never does, even though the choice appears obvious right now, and even the media that are asking the questions aren't buying this. We'll break all of this down, what's really going on there, and what this means for Ole Miss and this week's matchup. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. We also have started doing a newsletter. We blow it out on social media every single morning. It's going to recap what this show's about. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time account app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, there seems to be some weirdness happening, right, with the quarterback situation. And I heard behind the scenes that the locker room, and not necessarily it's getting frayed, but there's a greater risk factor if this continues. But that isn't why I'm bringing this up. Everybody in the world seems to know that Trinidad Chambliss is the quarterback. Even the fact that Trinidad played the whole game against Washington State points in that direction. I know that Lane Kiffin is talking about the healthiness of Austin Simmons for this game, the benefit of this game, because he knows that Kirby likes to over-prepare for whichever opponent they're playing. So if you can get an extra 10 minutes of practice on Austin Simmons, it might be worth it. But here is the problem in this situation as far as I can tell. Trinidad Chambliss, the largest crowd he has ever played in front of on the road, was at Kentucky for about 4 minutes. And it was a game that Ole Miss was leading. It might have been a little bit loud for what's going on, but Trinidad Chambliss got down the field, scored a touchdown. The Georgia Bulldogs game is a complete sellout. Absolutely. There's going to be 90,000 people in Sanford Stadium. They are going to be raucous. The Spite Squad, the whole 9 yards. It is going to be in a louder environment than he has ever played in. He has never seen anything like this. And because of that, these games that are happening on the outside, instead of getting that player ready to go, to let him being the focal point to know exactly what's going on, that concerns me. Because this is the game that everybody has been worried about with Trinidad Chambliss. The home games against LSU, I mean, that could have been a step up and a step too far. The road game in Kentucky, okay, whatever. Tulane, whatever. Everybody was worried about him going on the road into a hostile environment, and we are at that point of the season. You have a road game at Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia, and then you have a road game in Norman, Oklahoma at the University of Oklahoma. Those two games make Ole Miss fans nervous. What if Trinidad Chambliss freaks out? Now, he hasn't to this point. Even his bad performance against Washington State, and I put air quotes up, his bad performance. He was 20 of 29 for 2 touchdowns and ran for another. It just didn't quite look right early on in the game. It was a slow start, really similarly to what it was against LSU, by the way. Now, this defense that he is going to see against Georgia is not what the LSU defense is. If he can do that against the LSU defense, he can do it against this defense. But when you add in the crowd noise and things like that, it does make the risk factor of things going wrong greater, because if you turn the ball over against the Georgia Bulldogs, this team will take you apart. Lane Kiffin was very non-committal in his press conference that both quarterbacks, this will be the first big road environment, whoever we decide to go to. Like I said, the media in the room, they're just not buying it. They're not playing those games. But when you live in a world to where you just report on what Lane Kiffin says and ignore all the evidence around it, it's going to be weird. And I talked to a couple of people this week that said, they all thought that Trinidad needed to start this game. Even a couple of people that might be surprising in that fact. But they also said that this is kind of stressing the locker room back and forth. Whenever you do this, it asks for factions to be developed. We're in the age of NIL and all that. These games are risky. And listen, Lane Kiffin has played these games with absolutely every quarterback that he's had. Going back to when he recruited Jackson Dart, he didn't do it to Matt Corral because there's no sense in doing it, but you had the John Rice Plumlee thing and all of that, and everybody, the competition was already in the building. Then Jackson Dart came in to compete with Luke Altmaier after Matt Corral got injured in the Sugar Bowl. Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier went back and forth, but it was a messy quarterback competition to the point where the athletic director had to get involved from time to time. Jackson Dart won that job. Luke Altmaier transferred to Illinois, where he still is, and he is absolutely balling right now. Congratulations to Luke in that fact. The next year, they brought in Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard to compete against Jackson Dart in 2023. Spencer Sanders just sat on the bench, but the competition was supposed to be there. Spencer Sanders was the starting quarterback at Oklahoma State and was probably the last good one that they had up there. But Jackson Dart dealt with the competition. The next year, all of a sudden, Jackson Dart's kind of the guy. He is mainly the guy. So you look at what's going on this year. You had Austin Simmons come in and be the backup. He was the backup quarterback in 2024, by the way, as well. He was the assumed starter, all of that stuff. He started against Georgia State, threw 2 first-quarter interceptions, rebounded. They beat him 63-7. He came in against Kentucky, 2 first-quarter interceptions, rebounded. They ended up winning the game. But he got injured. And because of that, he got Wally pipped. So I'm trying to think about how Lane Kiffin figured that he could stretch that out from Arkansas way back when, 3rd game of the season, to this Georgia game. And we're almost there. Lane Kiffin in his press conference got to be non-committal in the press conference and play all the quarterback games that he plays. But this, I don't think, is for Trinidad Chambliss's benefit or Austin Simmons' benefit. This is for completely Kirby's benefit. And I think Kirby's smart enough to know exactly who is going to play quarterback. But does Lane Kiffin know if Kirby has a tick or not that means he will not be able to prepare for this? Maybe he's an OCD type personality. Maybe we're playing 4D chess with that. Maybe that's the explanation for what's going on. If you understand what is happening with the quarterback room right now, it needs to be all hands on deck to get Trinidad Chambliss ready to play in a tough atmosphere at Sanford Stadium. Failure to do so would be negligence. And because of that, it gets weird, and these quarterback games just need to stop and just take Trinidad and get him ready for that environment as best you can, because that is going to be something that you can lose the game almost instantly. The other thing is like the get your popcorn ready type stuff. We're going to talk about all of that when we look at the keys and all of that in the next segment. So up next, we dive into the keys of the game, and starting with the most important one, the run game. Listen, Georgia's always been built around balance and physicality. Even though their backs may look a little bit different from year to year, the formula hasn't changed since Vince Dooley. You stop the Georgia run game, you stop Georgia. Ole Miss has to win the line of scrimmage, limit early down success, make the Bulldogs play behind the chains. That's when their offense becomes human. Pete Golding's front seven will need to play a disciplined, gap-sound football game and trust the secondary to hold up when Georgia tries to counter with play action. We'll talk about how Ole Miss can disrupt the rhythm and the other keys to slowing down the Bulldogs coming up next. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is honestly kind of exciting. But getting your home ready for guests and celebrations, it can feel like a lot. Maybe you serveware needs a refresh, or the guest room could use some more bedding, or maybe Wayfair has everything you need to get holiday ready, from Christmas trees to wreath to bedding, cookware, outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it so easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for each and every style and budget. And with free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without all the hassle of huge delivery fees. I love how easy it was to find pieces that fit my style and budget. Everything was in one place, and checkout was an absolute breeze. The delivery is fast and free, which is a lifesaver during this busy time of year, honestly. So get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now and shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many different ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during the game. It makes watching football even that much more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but helps keep all of this for free. If you want more, join the Insiders program in the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. So give that a try. And if you don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is there for you. So this is a big game. This is likely the largest game in the modern era history of Ole Miss football. Ole Miss is ranked 5th in the country. They're undefeated. Everything is at Ole Miss's fingertips. If you look at it, if Ole Miss loses this game to the Georgia Bulldogs and loses the game to the Oklahoma Sooners and wins out, they're still in the playoff. So it's not a win or go home type personality, playoff game, all of that stuff. But this is big for what it could mean. Listen, Oklahoma and Georgia at this point look remarkably gettable. Now, it's going to be tough to beat either one of them because their blue chip ratio is through the roof as far as talented players that they have. So it's going to be difficult to beat Georgia. It's going to be difficult to beat Oklahoma, especially in their place, but it's possible. It's real. That's the reason the line right now for this week is at 6.5 points. This is not the Georgia team that Ole Miss saw in 2023 with Jackson Dart. This is a much more gettable version of the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, I'm not saying that Ole Miss is going to win the game. I'm saying they can win the game. And I'm going to tell you how they can win the game. When you look at the keys, this is the simplest game of the season. If you stop the run, you will win. If you don't, you will lose. As simple as that. In this football game, that is the matchup you absolutely have to win. No explosives, no 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10. That type of stuff needs to be shut down so you can get the long yardage passes. Now, Gunnar Stockton, he's a good quarterback that can throw the ball and make plays at time. He is somebody that you want to be in control of winning this game for Georgia. And if Gunnar Stockton beats you, Gunnar Stockton beats you. Do not, though, lose the game because Georgia was able to physically manhandle you at the line of scrimmage, especially with the problems that they've had on the offensive line position going into last week's Auburn game. They had trouble running the ball in that game. They had trouble protecting Gunnar Stockton. Honestly, if Hugh Freeze and Auburn's offense wouldn't have completely lost their mind, Georgia would have lost that game. And Georgia lost to Alabama at home earlier in the season. Georgia beat Tennessee in overtime in Neyland because Tennessee missed a field goal at the end of regulation. This Georgia team, as it sits right now, they are gettable. The next thing is Lane Kiffin's big game composure will be a major factor in this game. He cannot have any get your popcorn ready type moments. We need to see the Lane Kiffin that coached against the Georgia Bulldogs a year ago, willing to take 0 chances, play the field position game. 3 points is good enough. And if you do that, you are likely going to win. Now, I always say that it's going to be imperative on Lane Kiffin to play like the favorite. Well, you're not the favorite in this game. So there is a little bit more margin for error. But if you have a chance to take points, unless you can't stop the Georgia offense. If that happens and you get into a touchdown back and forth type of game, then maybe you go for it more often. Listen, this is the only game. This is the only game where you're going to get the ability to play the underdog card this season, likely. Play that way. Play with an intensity of an underdog, of nobody believing you can do it. Because the reality of this Ole Miss football team, this is the number 5 team in America right now. This is a team that's going to be favored in 11 of 12 of its games this season. Not much by Oklahoma, but they're going to be favored likely in that game. You're number 5. You're playing a home game you're playing in Georgia's home, who's number 9 or number 7, depending on which service you look at. They are going to this game feeling like they are the favorite because they are the favorite. Play like an underdog. It is not very often that the number 5 team in the country with that kind of stuff going on gets to play an us versus the world mentality. Ole Miss has gotten that in spades this week, honestly. People are mad because game day is going to cover this because Ole Miss barely beat Washington State when you could be going to the Holy War. It's happening. Look on X. You can see it. Ole Miss gets to play an us versus the world card against the Georgia Bulldogs, and that changes things. The us versus the world is probably the only effective coach speak metaphor that's in modern college football, the us versus the world mentality. When a player whoever feels like they are getting picked on, they tend to make plays. And them tending to make plays means they're going to, instead of a 2nd and 6, it might be a 2nd and 8. And if it's 2nd and 8, all of a sudden Pete Golding can work. Because the way the Georgia pass game works, it's not so much downfield. It's all close to the line of scrimmage. A lot of bubbles to Zachariah Branch. This game, you can get it played in a phone booth if you win at the line of scrimmage and stop the run game. If they can get the play action going, they can stretch the field a little bit. But Pete Golding, believe it or not, even though Kirby is somebody that was at Alabama and kind of started all of this, you have a situation where Pete Golding can do the Nick Saban thing where you can kind of boa constrict them and get closer and closer to the line of scrimmage. But it all depends on whether or not Georgia can run the football. If they can't, Georgia's going to get beat, period. Listen, our final segment, we're locked in on what we want to watch when the Ole Miss Rebels face the Georgia Bulldogs, because this isn't just another matchup. It's arguably the biggest game in modern Ole Miss history. We'll talk about how Lane Kiffin's offense handles Georgia's relentless front seven, how Trinidad Chambliss and Austin Simmons, I guess, manages the moment, whether Pete Golding's defense can create enough havoc to tilt the field from the first drive of the fourth quarter to every possession. It will tell us something about where this program really stands among college football's elite. We'll break it all down next and tell you exactly what we will be watching for coming up next. Listen, college football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, tap, I saw an amazing deal. I'm talking about your favorite football games for as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Now, we talked about this going into the break, but this is probably the biggest football game for Ole Miss in the modern era. We can talk about 2003 LSU and what that meant and all of that, but this one has national significance, not just SEC significance, national significance, because if Ole Miss beats Georgia, they're going to be favored against Oklahoma. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not saying they can't lose it and it's guaranteed a win. But if Ole Miss wins against Georgia, at that point you're playing with house money. And their win against Oklahoma from almost guaranteeing themselves the playoff. You have South Carolina, you have the Citadel, you have Florida, and you have Mississippi State. But the way it lines up, these next two games will determine so much about Ole Miss this season. So what I'm going to be watching for in this game, how will Trinidad Chambliss look in that environment? That will be key. You know, stopping the run is probably the biggest thing. I always talk about how this is the simplest game that Ole Miss has played to date this season. Right below that will be how Trinidad Chambliss reacts to that environment. This will be the most pulsating environment, the most NCAA 2025 environment that Trinidad Chambliss has played in. Remember, this is a guy that at Ferris State played in front of about 3,000 or 4,000 people in the game. And at Ole Miss, the three games he started were all at home, which means he didn't have to deal with crowd noise at all. Now, he did play 4 minutes on the road against Kentucky, but how Trinidad Chambliss reacts to this environment will be key. Now, he has had slow starts against LSU and against Washington State. That can't happen against Georgia, and you have to take care of the football. Now, the big thing that you're impressed with is Georgia has a couple of corners that feel like they're a little bit susceptible to the deep pass. So I expect Deuce Alexander, Trey Wallace, those guys on the outside playing the deep ball, the deep back shoulder throw. I feel like that is going to come back in. Alabama, or Auburn, I should say, ran the ball relatively effective. Alabama, honestly, ran the ball effectively, but the pass defense is where this defense is struggling right now for the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, I think a minimum of 8 receivers need to catch passes for Ole Miss in this game. They don't need to fall into the trap of just throwing it to 1 or 2 players and you have somebody with 6 catches and somebody with 8 catches. No, you need to spread the ball around to everybody because that makes you hard to defend. And maybe Daquan Wright, who I think is the best player on this offensive unit as it is, has a relatively big day for Ole Miss. Ole Miss taking advantage of the linebackers at Georgia, that is going to be massively key. And a lot that they did a year ago to get ready for the Georgia Bulldogs, they can do a lot of the same stuff. You'll see Deuce Alexander and Caden Lee coming out of the backfield, running angle routes and Texas routes and things like that. Things designed to get the wide receiver or get the linebackers in space and the ability to take advantage of them. So we'll see how that goes. And the third thing is, do not under any circumstances, give Georgia a short field and make them drive the ball 75 plus if you can. That means you're probably scoring touchdowns. Make Georgia drive the length of the field. They'll be able to do it once or twice. They will not be able to do it consistently. And if that happens, you will be in good shape. So stop the run. That's a key that we talked about in the second segment. And if they have a long field to drive, you can see how that would match up. So we'll see how that goes and where Ole Miss sits. Really interesting stuff. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. Hey, we got Gary Patterson as a surprise guest that has come on and talk about the Ole Miss Georgia game. We have Jake Crane on tomorrow's show. We have John 4K, which is up on the site right now to see. Bill Flowers is going to be there. We're going to do a live stream tonight with Todd Wade. We are blowing this week out, and we are going to treat it like it is the biggest game in the modern history of Ole Miss football, and so many great perspectives are coming in. In another big moment for Locked On, college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff. It's your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley, along with Locked On's local experts. I will be on this week for the Ole Miss Georgia game. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. Remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.